sefyll wrth ffachlyd hau wrth cofio ceau hael. Fy mwyd un y ddall I dy olwg y di, dwi'n yn teimlo yn y fy enaid. Y gorffennol yw'r unig lle I mi, trial y dy gofio di. I've never made promises lightly. There have been some that I've broken, but I swear in the days still ahead we'll walk in a fields of gold. We walked in fields of gold. See the children run as the sun goes down, as we lie in fields of gold. When we walked in fields of gold. Thank you very much. I'm going to sing you another sort of Welsh one now, and it's called On Ffôn a Bangel. San ever neffero a mae'n ei hadryd yn credu dy fod yno on y chlew afal a wisel dy lais yn canwn y ddawel an fon a fangel I dy warach o di an y fon a fangel I dy warach o heno an y fôn a fangel I'th gysir o di Mae sŵn y dy lais yn y ddigon I chwalu'r holl am y heion an y fôn a fangel a ta ti ac am bell waith yng nghanol y berw bywyd dwi'n teimlo yn unig ac yn isel y hefyd a phan y rwyf ar y fy nghliniau mi wylaf trwy fy nagrau a chofiaf geiriau dwyd ystwrtha I an y fôn a fangel I dy warach o heno an y fôn a fangel I'th gysir o di Mae sŵn y dy lais yn y ddigon I chwalu'r holl am y heion an y fôn a fangel a ta ti Ti yw'r angen sydd yma wastadol yn y gwafalu am y danaf lle bynnag I byddaf angel warcheidiol, a chofiaf geiriau, dwyd a stor y ddau, an y fôn af angel, I dywad y god heno, an y fôn af angel, I'th gysir o dir, mae sŵn y dylais yn ddigon, I chwalu'r holl am ei hion, an y fôn af angel a da ti. An y fôn af angel a da ti. Diolch yn fawr.
Great, diolch Bronwyn, thank you very much. So now we're going to have a little conversation, and my two guests are making their way to the stage. So just a little bit of context, you'll have noticed that we are 4 months away from a general election, and it's quite a strange general election because it's one we've known about for 5 years. We've known the date, the 7th of May 2015, that's never happened before. It comes in the middle of the longest economic slump in economic history. We're being asked to judge a coalition, which is a very rare thing in the British political tradition, and we've got some of the most uncertain, volatile, unpredictable opinion polls that we've seen also in modern political history. None of the traditional parties have captured the public mood, and all of their leaders are unpopular. So that's the setting we have. Now, elections are funny things because they're decided by a very small number of seats. Across the UK, there are 650 constituencies, MPs. 194 of them decide the election. They're the marginal seats, the seats that can be decided by a 5% shift of vote, and that's where the parties put their spending power and their effort. And in Cardiff North, we have one of the most interesting marginal seats in the whole country. It has a Conservative MP at the minute, a Labour Assembly member, and a majority at the last election of just 194 votes, 0.4%. So it's on a knife edge, and it'll be in the seat of Cardiff North, we'll decide who's going to win the general election and who's going to be the next Prime Minister. So I thought it would be quite interesting to get the two main candidates, because it is a two-horse race, to come and just have a chat. And it's the first time they've actually sat and looked each other in the whites of each other's eyes. They'll be doing it a lot more over the coming months, but we have an exclusive tonight. So I'll introduce them to the stage and I'll go and join them. So we have Mary Williams and Craig Williams. Mary is the Labour candidate for Cardiff North. She's from Rwbaina, went to Whitchurch High, is a former history teacher and deputy head, and has taught in lots of London comprehensives, and then stopped and decided to cycle all around the world, and didn't quite do it, but cycled an awful long way around America, and now she's working with schools and is campaigning very hard, as is Craig Williams, who is the Conservative, no relation, by the way, despite the similar surnames. Craig is he's a Cardiff councillor, he's the Conservative candidate for Cardiff North, and he's worked in Conservative politics for over a decade. He's chairman of the Economy Committee in Cardiff Council, Economy and Culture Committee in Cardiff Council, and he's on the board of Cardiff Bus. So two well-grounded and rooted candidates who are fighting very hard. So I'm just going to segue slowly over here. So thank you both for joining us. So what I just wanted to do, we're hearing a lot about opinion polls and prime ministerial debates, and there's lots, when we get to this stage in an election, lots of personalities and lots of predictions. And I don't want to go into any of that because none of it can be controlled by either of you two. What I would like to ask you is why this election matters. What's at stake in this general election? Because a number of people have said this election will decide big things, and it'll shift the nature of the state and the nature of politics. So I just want to ask you what you thought was at stake in this election. Craig, can I start with you?
Well, I don't think you'll be surprised. Thanks very much, and thanks for the invite tonight and the beautiful music to kick this off. But I don't think you'll be surprised if I start talking about the economy, and I think that's going to be the key to it. And it's the key to public service delivery. Unless you get a credible, a long-term economic plan and a credible plan to restore, continue the recovery and to tackle the deficit and the basic structural financial problems we've got in this country, well, you can't afford to deliver anything else. So what for me is there's an opportunity in this general election to judge a coalition, which is unusual in British politics, and it's even more unusual to get another coalition out of a coalition, but hopefully that won't happen. But I think it's going to be about the economy, and in terms of delivering that plan, in terms of tackling that structural deficit, and in fact going into this election, the two main parties don't really, in terms of tackling that deficit, you saw the vote this week, and the Office of Budget Responsibility, we both accept that it's got to be tackled, but it's how we do it, and it's keeping that stability, because, you know, knocking in Cardiff North and talking to people, you get people worried about their mortgages, you get people worried about their jobs, you get people really concerned about their security financially, and I think showing you've got that long-term economic plan and you're willing to make the difficult decisions to keep a kind of sound financial basis and get us back up to, you know, the plan is to get a bit of a surplus so then you can invest in public services, which will be, you know, 5-6 years down the line.
Okay, so for you, the big thing at stake is the stability and the future shape of the economy.
Absolutely, and that I think that frames the entire debate.
Okay, Mary, what do you think is at stake?
I think this election is about what we want this country to be like. George Osborne at the last autumn statement that he gave, basically his plans show that he wants to take Britain back to levels of public funding that were seen in the 1930s. And I think that's one of the biggest choices that people have at this election is who is the economy for? Yes, we do need to get the deficit down, but we need to get it down in a fair way. And when I speak to people in Cardiff North, when I knock on doors, nearly everybody says the same, which is I'm working hard, but it doesn't feel like it's paying off. I haven't had a pay rise. Lots of people work in the public sector in Cardiff North in the last 4 or 5 years. Those who haven't, very few of them have had a pay rise either. And it doesn't feel like the economy's working for them. And I think that's what this election is about what kind of country do we want to be.
Okay, so it must be really hard from a campaigning point of view because you've both essentially got quite a miserable message. Because there's no end in sight in the short term. You're both fundamentally accepting the same kinds of rules around spending. There's not going to be tax cuts. There's not going to be a big splurge. In fact, more than half the cuts in public spending are still to come, regardless whoever wins this election. So how do you enthuse people who the polls telling us are pretty fed up with politics anyway, when your message is quite a miserable one? How do you do that, Craig? Well,
you get out there and you make it relevant to them. And you know, talking about tax cuts, you know, you've seen the personal allowance go up, and it will go up again if we got the Conservative majority government to over 10,000. And you know, that is delivering a real-term tax cut that you can feel in your pocket and at the end of the month. And you know, having that sound plan, that sound economic plan, means you can do things like freeze the duty on petrol. Now, that's been compounded by what we've seen in the oil markets, but today it's under £1 in some garages, and it's delivering that plan that enables you to tackle, you know, helping people out in their week-to-week, daily, in their pockets, the families, but it's that security and stability for people that have got mortgages, for people that have got a job in the private or public sector. Unless it's making it relevant to them, and people can see it. People know that if you spook the financial markets, if you've got a plan that people just don't believe, you're going to hurt jobs, you're going to hurt savings, you're going to hurt mortgages, you're going to hurt loans, you're going to hurt people on a day-to-day basis.
How do you enthuse people when there's such misery around?
Well, I think we do have a positive message, and as I said, people, what they're saying is that they're working hard and it's not paying off, and what we're saying is these are the practical things that a Labour government would do that would make a difference. So we have said that we'd freeze energy prices. We've now even said that we'd force the regulator, when wholesale prices have gone down, to put prices down. We've said we'd make work pay by increasing the minimum wage to £8 an hour. We'd give tax cuts to companies who pay the living wage. So there's all ways that we would make work pay. We've also said we'd introduce a 10p rate tax. So I think that's a pretty positive message. We've also said we'd invest in the NHS through a mansion tax with properties over £2 million. So I think there's lots of people want to hear practical things, as Craig said, relevant, But these are the things that would make a difference, and why, when you're talking to people, that's why you want them to vote.
So these are big picture issues. So these are sort of large canvas. How much is the balance in the issues you're facing on the doorstep about the stuff we see on the news, and how much of it is about local issues?
Well, it's difficult in Cardiff North, in Wales, because of course of the devolved settlement, because you've got an administration over the road there that delivers on a lot of things that are relevant and pertinent to them. And it's the first kind of general election where you've got people actually realising that there are different layers, and where the NHS is delivered across the road, not Westminster and Wales, where education is delivered across the road. But your Member of Parliament now is becoming a very, very strong advocate for the health service, a very strong advocate for education, but no direct policy levers. And it's difficult because the last thing anyone wants to hear is a politician going, you can't blame me, it's not my fault, it's somebody else. You know, that's not what they want to hear. They want to hear solutions, they want to hear you talking about what you do. And framing it in the local level is difficult for that because, of course, and then if you start, I'm a Cardiff councillor, so I can rattle on about the council all day long, but, you know, they're electing a Member of Parliament. So it's framing it in a way, making it relevant, making it appeal to them because it's about the issues they care about, but it's being honest. Because, you know, if somebody, as you often find with the University Hospital for Wales in Cardiff North, you'd expect people concerned about the NHS. Now, it is a difficult conversation to have as a parliamentary candidate because of that indirect kind of advocacy role rather than a direct policy role. And it's boring and it's dry and nobody really cares about it. They just want a better NHS. But, you know, that's why that message is tied to what I'd started off with, is if you don't get the economy right, well, the guys across the road won't have the money they need to deliver the NHS.
And if it's about honesty and about being positive, do you find it helpful when David Cameron describes Offa's Dyke as the line between life and death, when the studies show actually the different health services across the UK are broadly similar, just a bit different?
You've had that House of Commons report that came out at the beginning of the month, which I'm sure you've read, as I have, and there was some stark difference between England and Wales. Now, the language, I'm the Conservative candidate, and I'm going to say the language was choice. It was his choice. But the point he was making, I think, stands up to scrutiny, and it does, evidenced by that report that came out of the House of Commons in terms of the Welsh and the NHS. And you see it in terms of cancer campaigners, and you see it in terms of patients moving to England to get that treatment they deserve, and they can only access in England.
But you won't be using that language about death in Wales?
I don't. That's my personal choice. I certainly wouldn't use that language.
Okay. Mary, what do you think in terms of your campaigning, the balance between the UK issues and the local issues?
I think local issues are what directly interests and engages people. So we've had a really big issue in Cardiff North, as in the whole of Cardiff, about the threatened closure of two really important local libraries. And I think for me, myself and Julie Morgan have been campaigning hard to make sure that those libraries, we're getting very echoey here,
It's a big place.
to make sure those libraries stay open. And I think the role of your MP, your assembly member, is to fight for things that local people want. And I think it's that link between, okay, well, hang on a second, why are the council, why are they making these cuts? Well, where does this money come from? Isn't it from Welsh Government? Well, yes, it is from Welsh Government. And where does the Welsh Government get the money from? Well, it's from Westminster. And what choices are being made in Westminster? And, you know, it is a complex argument, but I think that's what brings politics to people. And when you have that conversation, and actually it does make a difference to those local issues, what you vote on May the 7th, and whether you vote for a Tory or a Labour government. And, as I said before, whether you want Britain to go back to the funding levels of the 1930s, where we did still have those local libraries, then I think these are, you know, it really brings it home to people and makes it really relevant.
I'm glad you raised the libraries. I was going to ask you about that. So this is the future of Whitchurch Library and Rhif Library, and you're both campaigning to save these libraries.
Certainly am.
And you know, this is not uncommon where you have Conservative and Labour candidates who are saying at Westminster we're going to stick to the spending levels that have been set out, but locally we don't want anything to close. And I think I've challenged, let me just finish the question, I've challenged you about this on Twitter, I think. I just find it, as an observer of the scene, quite odd when you're saying we believe in austerity, we believe in a smaller state. As a matter of political philosophy, we think the state should do less. But you try and close something in my area, and I'll have a placard outside and try and defend it. Isn't that a little bit dishonest?
Not at all, because you've got to, it's all about choices and priorities. And this is what, at the moment, the devolved kind of settlement at the moment doesn't get. You've got choices to make, and you've got to stand up and be counted about the responsibility of those choices. Now, the libraries in question, it's 7 libraries in Cardiff. The budget line is 283,000 they're saving, and it's in the context of £1 billion council budget. And then you've got the £15 billion, so it's 0.01% of Cardiff, and then upwards to the Welsh Government. And my point is that you've got choices to make. Now, I think a library is a core public service. And if you look at Monmouthshire, which is in Wales, so has the same funding difficulties Cardiff does, they've made that decision, and they're making libraries the hub of their communities. Now, in Cardiff, and it's also, it really does irk, because if you look at where the closures are in Cardiff, they're in the north of the city. If you drew a line north-south, I'm not talking constituencies now, you can see a direct choice there, where you're having the closures of these community hubs in the north of the city, and the ones in the south is having investment in terms of new hubs, and the services. Now, you cannot say that that is because of the Westminster funding settlement. That's choices. You know, and we'll be putting an alternative budget together. We scrutinise these plans, and there are alternatives to that budget line.
But they do have to be cut. The Welsh Government, who fund local health authorities, have had their budget cut by 8%, and over half the cuts are yet to come. So some local service will have to close.
Some. And I'll be putting forward an alternative budget where I'd see the line. And my point is, it's all about choices, and the line for me is not libraries.
Okay, even though people aren't using libraries as much as they used to, because
Rabina is one of the busiest libraries in Cardiff, and it follows one of the busiest libraries in Wales. That doesn't follow. Okay, it's one of the busiest.
Okay, Mary, one of the things that Plaid Cymru are trying to say is that there's a vote this week in the House of Commons. The Labour Party and the Conservative Party all signed up to austerity budgets. They both said they're going to have to be more cuts, and they're saying you're both the same. But there's a difficulty, isn't there? When at a UK level, they're saying for understandable reasons you have to stick to the plans, but at a local level you're trying to make hay from what is a decision of a Labour Council and a Labour government in the Assembly.
All the plans that we've made are costed. I think the choice at the next election, it is a different choice. We've said we'd get the deficit down in a fairer way, and we haven't signed up to exactly the same cuts as George Osborne, although it's very, I don't think that the Tories have laid out exactly what they would cut either. Just back on Monmouth, Abergavenny Library did close, I think I'm right in saying that. They certainly moved it.
So it's still open, but in a different place.
So if you said to Rabina people, would you like to move Rabina Library? I don't think that would be hugely popular either. I mean, I do want the council to change their mind on the libraries, but I absolutely think that it's a different philosophy. Also, in terms of getting the economy going, to get the economy going, people have to have money in their pockets. That's why we'd raise the minimum wage. That's why we'd give incentives to pay the living wage. And if you get the economy going, if people have confidence, if they have money in their pockets, then the economy grows, tax receipts grows, and I think that is how you cut the deficit as well.
Because it seems to me one of the tactics of your opponents, especially to the left of you, is to say that you don't really represent change. Now, at the last election, the Green Party didn't get that many votes, but they got 362 votes, and the Conservatives won the seat by 194. So had the Greens not taken those votes, they'd have won. And I certainly knew people at the time who felt fed up with the Labour Party, voted Green, and were surprised to find the Conservative win. Now, I wonder, is this what's behind David Cameron's tactics of trying to get the Greens included in the TV debates? And you could well, if he succeeds, you could well feel the effect of that in this constituency. Are you concerned about that?
I don't think it's for political parties to decide for the broadcasters who they're going to have in their debates. I think that should be a matter for the broadcasters. I think, both of us accepted immediately to speak this evening, and I think it's important to have as many voices in the election as possible. I think on the left, I think that's always the challenge for the left. Is I think the right place for us all to convene is the Labour Party. There will be different voices within the party, but I think ultimately, unless we have that collective, then we don't get the progressive change that we need, and we end up with Tory governments. And
similarly for you, Craig, there's lots of splitting of the votes going on at the minute. The poll out today, all the party leaders are very unpopular. UKIP is polling strongly. Are you concerned the impact that will have on traditional Conservative voters?
Well, it just re-emphasises for me about politics in general now, rather than just focusing on splits between Green and Labour and UKIP and Conservative. The fact that there is a genuine apathy out there, and they're crying out for proper engagement. And it's not just shove as many leaflets through the door as possible. It's proper, get out on the doorstep, look them in the whites of the eyes and have a genuine conversation. And that's what we're doing. And it's about re-engaging with people and explaining that why our message about the long-term economic plan matters to them and the relevance. And it's all about engagement. And that's what will win this seat or lose this seat. It's proper engagement. And it's getting out there and making people feel like, and I'm not a big fan of these the leadership debates because it makes it very presidential. I'd rather people go into the polling booth of Cardiff North and think, I'm voting for that person because they will make the best Member of Parliament of Cardiff North and the best advocate for me. Not because they watched the leadership debate. And it would be strange, I suppose, the Conservatives saying this here, because I don't mean this negatively, overly negative, but my odds are on David Cameron coming out in that leadership debate between him and Ed Miliband. But I think the choice should be about your local Member of Parliament.
So it's about hard slog on the doorstep during the campaign. So how long have you been at this campaign? When were you selected?
So I was selected in May, not 2013. I think we were both probably selected around the same time. And so Ed Miliband has said that we're going to have 4 million conversations collectively across the country. We've been in the Labour Party knocking on doors every day for the last at least 6 months and knocking on doors very often for the last 18 months. And I agree with Craig that it is about engagement. And I think if you look at what happened in the Llandaff North by-election, which was in Cardiff North, we spoke to 99 out of 10 people in Llandaff North, and the percentage of the Labour vote increased. UKIP didn't do that well. And I think that's because if you talk to people, that's what politics is. People say they're fed up of politics, but people aren't fed up of talking to people. And every single day I have those conversations, and every day I'm convinced by that.
So by the time of the election, you'll have been campaigning for 2 years.
Yeah.
You must be exhausted.
I think I'm a teacher. I've taught for 12 years in inner city schools. That can be quite exhausting, so I'm enjoying the campaign.
But where do you get it? There's a question about who do we attract to stand as candidates and who's going into politics. And isn't telling somebody you can have to campaign for 2 years and knock on doors, you're going to put off people who don't have your levels of enthusiasm about it?
Well, I think it's good to have a level of enthusiasm and like talking to people and want to campaign and believe in something so much that you want to campaign hard and commit a lot to it. So, and there's lots of people that are volunteering in the campaign. It's not just the candidate, it's the team. We couldn't do it without volunteers. We don't have the money that the Conservative Party has, so we have to rely on volunteers delivering most of our leaflets, knocking on all the doors, phoning people up. So if anybody would like to volunteer this evening.
For either campaign.
Well, there's a serious point there in terms of money. This is a very unequal race. Because I think the Conservatives are likely to outspend Labour 3-1.
But the election's fought in the marginals, and we're now in the medium-term and short-term campaigns.
And you're getting a lot of extra help.
Yeah, but you've got limits. I think we can spend £30,000 between now and the beginning of April, and then 13,000. You can't chuck millions at seats.
And you'll spend up to that limit, I presume.
Well, I hope so, but I've got to get out and raise.
Will you spend up to that limit, Mary?
We won't be able to get to the longer limit, no. And certainly in the last 18 months, yes, we definitely don't have the money that the Conservative Party has, if it is.
But it's about real engagement, and you can't buy that. You've got to have a genuine appetite and get out there. And we've both been at this for a long time, and we both bump into each other in lots of places. It's active campaign. It is genuinely a marginal seat, and it is genuinely people are going to have that engagement that is right. I wish it happened in every seat, but there will be a genuine choice come May the 7th.
One of the problems parties have is the number of people they can draw, the number of volunteers. People joining political parties is dramatically down consistently over a period. You know, I see tweets by candidates of all parties across the country. It's an obsession with selfies every time you do this, Mary, a lot. Obsessions with doing selfies every time you go to campaign. And it's a small number of people. They tend to be older people, same faces cropping up time and again. So this is becoming more and more of a minority sport, isn't it?
I just think, never doubt that a small group of people can't change the world. In fact, it's the only thing that ever does. And actually, the people that will come with you and knock on doors. We had a big campaign day on Saturday. We had about 50 volunteers in total. We're always looking for more people. But yes, actually, it's a small number that might want to do that. But there's also lots of other things that you don't see that people are doing, like delivering leaflets, like making phone calls, like making lunches for volunteers. We've had a growing membership. I think we've had about probably 30 new people join in the last year. We have registered supporters. So I think people are, and as it gets closer to the election, people do seem more interested. And like I said, I think that people are fed up with politics, but not people. And that's how you recruit people, by friends asking their friends, by colleagues asking their colleagues. Sure. And actually, that's where the Labour Party started, in the workplace, in trade unions. And I think, in a way, we're going back to that.
And I'm interested, Craig, in the personal impact of this, because you've got a young child.
Charlie, 2.5.
2.5.
Yeah, you don't know the word exhausted, and I'm sure you say that yourself.
I've got 2 young children, and I don't know how you have time to do it, because it's quite a juggle, even without spending the time that you've been spending. So how do you manage that personal balance?
It definitely affects family life. There's no point denying it. But I've got a backpack. He goes on the back, and I think I've been at fireworks and things like that. He loves it, and luckily, like his dad, he loves cake. And there's always a coffee morning somewhere. So it's a choice you make, and you've got to do it as a family. And luckily, I have a very, very supportive wife, and it's great. And Charlie enjoys it, some of it, as much as I do.
Mm-hmm. Mary, what's the most surprising thing that's been raised with you on the doorstep?
Well, I think one of the slightly inappropriate things is, obviously, you knock at different times of day, so sometimes people aren't quite ready to answer you at the door.
To receive visitors.
So we've had a kind of number of people coming back to the board a little bit shocked from their... but as long as you find out how they're planning to vote, then that's okay. But lots of different things get raised. Different things are important to different people. But yeah, it's the same messages coming through all the time. People are working hard. It's not paying off. And fed up with politics. Not you, but yes.
So you don't get much negative reaction, just doors slammed in your face or F off or anything like that?
I've probably knocked on over 1,000 doors now, and I think one person has closed the door in my face.
Okay. How many doors have you knocked on, Craig? 1,000 or?
Oh, easily. A lot. I don't keep count. But no, it's great getting out and doing that. And
have you had anything peculiar raised?
Well, one person hadn't heard the phrase long-term economic plan, and I was shocked. No, but you get some great ones, and I think the best one that will always stick out is I obviously won't say who, but they were very concerned about us recycling Russian submarines in this country, and I had a very detailed chat, and I promised to look into it. I looked into it, and I don't think we are, but you get some great issues.
I just want to finish off on a question about engaging young voters. There's a poll done of the constituency which showed that 12% of under 25s are definitely not going to vote. Disengagement with young people. And we've seen the contrast with Scotland, where there's been huge engagement with young people, and that's not quite followed down the border. So what's your way of dealing with this problem? If you come across a young person who's never voted before, who's disenchanted, and the polls are all showing they're feeling that, don't see the point in voting, what's your message to them?
Well, we're doing some hustings in schools coming up, so we're trying to get out there and encourage people and share some of our enthusiasm for our political process with them. But it's genuinely, and it comes back, this has been the theme, right, engaging and asking, What do you think? And it's also nice for them to see some young candidates. I think the entire option for Cardiff North are relatively young candidates, and they can see young people involved in politics, and it's the issues that matter to them. But that you do have to break down that barrier that we actually care and we actually want to listen to them and their views matter, and also getting to them that politics affects everything. And if you want to get something changed, get involved and you can change it. If at the first hurdle you say, well, I can't change that, politicians never listen to me, well, you're not going to change it, are you? And it comes back time and time again to the engagement, because we've got, politically a lost generation.
And what's your answer to that, Mary?
So I've had some really positive experiences. So there's a few young people involved in the campaign to keep Whitchurch Library open, and I think their involvement and their enthusiasm and commitment to do that, it's a sad reason that they're getting involved, but they actually are inspiring other people in the way that they're so committed. So I think sometimes we need to be careful saying all young people, but I accept, of course, we want to get more young people voting. Obviously, my experience in the classroom, again, you're trying to, citizenship education was something brought in by the last Labour government to try and get people engaged. But I think young people are best at talking to other young people. So again, young people involved in the campaign is a good way to get younger people talking about politics. But it's definitely a big challenge. And I think the last thing I wanted to say is about tribal voting. So I think it's a bit of a symptom of fewer and fewer people will say, yes, I'm voting this because I always have. Obviously, lots of people in Cardiff North change their vote. And so, therefore, you get fewer people who say, yeah, my dad says this. Although I certainly get people that say, oh, I vote Labour, my dad would turn in his grave if I didn't. So that's the challenge, is to make that political education happen.
Okay, well, thank you both very much, and best of luck in engaging as many people as you both can. So please thank Craig and Mary.
Thank you.
That's it.
Thank you.
Cheers.
So now we have some poetry, as I hope you were expecting, and we have a terrific young person from Barry Island Primary School. Those of you who don't know it, Barry Island Primary School is one of the beacon schools of Wales. It's just past the Flying Colours is inspection, one of the best 8 schools in Wales, and one of its star pupils in Year 6 is Ashley Everett. Ashley, come on up, please. Ashley is 11 years old, lives on Barry Island, and she is going to read 2 or 3 poems. One she's written herself, and 2 of her other favourite poems. So Ashley, please come on up and tell us something about what you're going to read.
Hello. Okay, I've got some of my favourite poems to share with you today. First one, I've got a Dylan Thomas poem. I've got Dylan Thomas, Shall Gods be said to thump the clouds? Okay. Shall gods be said to thump the clouds when clouds are cursed by thunder? Be said to weep when weather howls? Shall rainbows be their tunic's colour? When it is rain, where are the gods? Shall it be said they sprinkle water from garden cans, or free the floods? Shall it be said that Venus-wise, an old god Doug's oppressed and pricked, the wet night scolds me like a nurse? It shall be said that gods are stone. Shall a drop drum on the ground flung gravel chime? Let the stone speak with tongues that talk all tongues. Okay, this next one I've wrote about myself commemorating World War I. It's called Diary of a Soldier Boy. Steel barbed wire gathering frost, I do not sleep in darkest night, for in my heart my cause is lost, yet I continue my country's fight. Bullets fire, yet I dare not gasp. The fields of France the blood destroys. In my shaking hands I grasp the diary of a soldier boy. His name was Michael Jonathan, a mighty soldier and a friend. He fought against the Ottoman, and against the Germans he did fend. When I was in my darkest hour, when the Germans fought and came, he gave his life and all his power, before I could even call his name. Poppies grow where he last lied. I search inside for bravery. I hear his voice dance in the sky. Eternally you'll give to me. Okay, this final one here, it's one of my favourite poems since I was little, called Don't Put Mustard in the Custard by Michael Rosen. Don't do that. Don't pull faces, don't tease the cat. Don't pick your ears, don't be rude at school. Who do they think I am, some kind of fool? One day, they'll say, don't put toffee in my coffee. Don't pour gravy on the baby. Don't put beer in his ear. Don't stick your toes up his nose. Don't put confetti on the spaghetti. And don't squash peas on your knees. Don't put ants in your pants. Don't put mustard in the custard. Don't chuck jelly at the telly. And don't throw fruit at the computer. Don't throw fruit at the computer. Don't what? Don't throw fruit at the computer. Don't what? Don't throw fruit at the computer. Who do they think I am? Some kind of fool? Thank you.
Thank you, Ashley. That was terrific. Now we can have a little bit more poetry in a minute, but we'll have another burst of music, and Bronwyn Lewis will take it away.
Thank you very much. This is a cover of quite a well-known English song called Build Me Up Buttercup, and I really hope you enjoy my version of it. I'll be over at 10, you call me time and again, but you're late. I wait around again. I run to the door, I can't take anymore. It's not you. I wait around again. Baby, baby, I'm trying to find a little time and I'll make you mine. I'll be home, I'll be beside the phone waiting for you. Just to let me down and mess me around, and the worst of all, you never call, baby, when you say you will. But I love you still, I need you more than anyone, darling. You know that I have from the start. So build me up, buttercup, don't break my heart. Don't break my heart. You were my toy and you could be the boy I adore if you just let me know. Although you're untrue, I'm attracted to you all the more. Why do I need you so? Baby, baby, I'm trying to find a little time and I'll make you mine. I'll be home, I'll be beside the phone waiting for you. Ooh, you just let me down and mess me around, and the worst of all, you never call baby when you say you will. But I love you still, I need you more than anyone, darling. You know that I have from the start. So build me up, buttercup, don't break my heart. Don't break my heart. Thank you very much. Thank you. This little second one is a song I wrote myself in Welsh, and it's called Gwlad y Gân, which is Land of the Song, and it's basically my worries about moving away from my small village in the Dylais Valley and moving to London to go to university. So it's basically moving away from home and not really wanting to. Edrych ar y ddinas o am y gylchi, wrth i'r ddydd y troi yn nos. Dim y tirlun yn ôl sydd heb gwyrddni fy nghefn wladi, mond ddiwch unig. Wrth edrych ti ar y gwylaf bach o'r syrch ben, ac adref daeth i'm y cof. Clywaf geiriadau ngalon i, fy naid yn osydd yn yr oriau yma. Gwlad y Gân. Cofiaf am y ddydd pan dwydaf hwyl y fawr, i'r teulu a ddyffren oedd y fri. Dim y dewis ond troi fy nghefn a gadael yn y gloi fy adref i. Wrth edrych ti ar y nen, y gwylaf bach o'r syrch ben, ac adref daeth i'm cof. Clywaf geiriadau ngalon i, fy naid yn osydd yn yr oriau yma. Gwlad y Gân. Clywaf geiriadau ngalon i, fy naid yn osydd yn yr oriau yma. Gwlad y Gân. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Bronwyn, and Bronwyn will be back again in a few minutes for a last blast. I had a phone call last night from Ali Anwar asking would I read some poetry, which is slightly terrifying. The last time I read poetry out loud, I was 13 years old in Ammanford Comprehensive School. I got as far as Simon and Andrew were brothers, they're home by the Galilee Lake. These words will stay with me forever, because every time I got to that point, I burst into nervous laughter, and 1,000 school children in front of me joined me in laughter. It was horrendous. So I tried again. Simon and Andrew were brothers. They're home by the Galilee Lake, and again I creased up. And I noticed every time I did this, and there must be 5 or 6 times, the teachers stopped laughing. And so I eventually composed myself, and I got halfway through the poem, and again broke down and had to give up. And my class teacher, I'll remember, didn't speak to me for 3 months. So I've been haunted by this experience. But Ali, as I say, asked me last night, and I didn't really have much poetry to hand, truth be told, but I thought the spirit of these events is to try and make poetry normal. So I thought I'd do my best. So I picked a couple of pieces I like, and I thought I'd embrace a Barry Island theme, given that Ashley flew the flag for Barry Island, that I would try and do the same as I live on Barry Island, Barry Bedos, as it's increasingly called. And I dug out one of my favourite pieces of poetry from Idris Davies, who was from the Rhymney Valley, for those of you who aren't familiar with his poems. And he was a miner, left school at 14, worked underground at Abertyswg and in Rhymney, and the general strike of 1926 left him unemployed. And one of his most famous poems is called The Angry Summer, a poem of 1926, which was published just during the war. It's a very long poem, and I hadn't read it for a while, and I dug it out last night, and I must say it's terrific and well worth reading. It's very, very long. So what I'm going to do is just pick out two pieces of the poetry. It tells the story of a Valleys community dislocated and divided by the bitterness of industrial strife and riddled by hunger and conflict and despair. But there are moments of levity and humour, as there always are. So the first one is perhaps one of the most famous sections. Let's go to Barry Island, Maggie Fach, and give all the kids one day by the sea, and sherbet and buns and paper hats, and a rattling ride on the figure eight. We'll have tea on the sands, and rides on the donkeys, and sit in the evening with the folk of Cymru, singing the sweet old hymns of Pantycelyn when the sun goes down behind the rocky islands. Come on, Maggie Fach, or the train will be gone. Then the kids will be howling all day, sticky with dirt and gooseberry jam. Leave the washing alone for today, Maggie Fach, and put on your best and come out to the sun and down to the holiday sea. We'll carry the sandwiches in a big brown bag and leave our troubles behind for a day with the chickens and the big black tips and the rival soup kitchens quarrelling like hell. Come, Maggie Fach, with your rose on your breast and an old Welsh tune on your little red lips, and we'll all sing together in the Cardiff train down to the holiday sea. But there are moments of darkness as well in the poem, and familiar themes throughout time, really, for working communities. And they were picking on the themes of earlier, people feeling disenchanted and disconnected from politics, and people feeling things will be done to them, and no matter what they do, they'll be sold out. And this is one of the final sections of the poem, which I think is resonant with betrayal, but pain as well, and despair. The telephones are ringing, and treachery's in the air. The sleek one, the expert at compromise, is bowing in Whitehall, and lackey to fox to parrot cries, "The nation must be saved." What is the nation, gentlemen? Who are the nation, my lords? The sleek one, the expert at compromise, is chattering in Whitehall. The men who have made this nation, who have made their gross in wealth, the men who have given their flesh and blood from century to century, do not scream and panic. They do not cringe and whine. They do not shudder in the hour of crisis. It is the robber and the gambler and the parasite who yell when the hour of reckoning comes. But the sleek one, the expert at compromise, is signing in Whitehall. The buying and selling is over. The treachery sealed and called a national triumph. And this Friday goes down to history, yellow and edged with black. It's well worth revisiting the poem of Idris Davies if you're not familiar with it. And I thought I'd finish on a lighter note on one of my favourite pieces of poetry, which I listened to religiously as a child. It was a great comfort for me when I was about 13 and my parents were going through a divorce, and I used to hide in the corner with headphones and listen to Max Boyce albums. And it was a great comfort to me, and my mother and I used to listen to them in the car, and we'd laugh at this one especially. And it was written and performed in the year of my birth, in 1976, and it tells of Max Boyce's time of Barry in the early 50s. So Idris Davies gave us Barry in the 20s. So this is Barry of the early 50s, and it's Max Boyce's Ode to Barry Island. I remember Miners' Fortnight when I was just a lad. We'd go to Barry Island, the weather always bad, in a brand new shirt and shoes that hurt, the ones Mam saved to buy to go to Barry Island on that last week in July. We'd catch a western by the square, my bucket in my hand. Then all the fuss to get on the bus, and we'd always have to stand. Then I'd be sick, and my shoes I'd kick, the ones Mam saved to buy to go to Barry Island on that last week in July. They'd put me by the driver for me to have some air. And my mother'd say, "He's never this way," and she'd come and comb my hair. And I'd see the sea, and I'd want to pee. And if I couldn't, I would cry when we went to Barry Island on that last week in July. Our caravan, the water's edge, 10 miles from the sea, and we dragged the cases over, and we didn't have the key. We couldn't light the gas lamp. I've gone and marked my tie when I went to Barry Island on that last week in July. I'm on the beach. It's Sunday. I've met a friend called Russ. I'll have to buy another bucket. Left mine on the bus. I've cut my foot. It's bleeding. My cousin says you'll die, and we'll bury you in Barry on the last week in July. I'm going to the fair tonight, my bucket full of shells. The weather forecast settled now, with dry and sunny spells. I bought Mam Gi a present, and I wave the sea goodbye. My mother's found my plastic mac, and the weather's nice and dry. Aye, that's how I remember Miners' Fortnight, when I was just a lad. When I went to Barry Island, the weather always bad. I think Max Boyce was a poet, but he just didn't know it. So to finish tonight, and before we do, to thank again Ali Anwar and the Hum Foundation for putting these events on. They'll be happening every month here in the Wales Millennium Centre with a varied programme. It won't be all like tonight. Thanks to the Millennium Centre as well for hosting. Thanks to Ashley and to Mary and to Craig. And thanks especially to Bronwyn Lewis, who's going to sing us out. So good night for me, and thank you for coming, and diolch Bronwyn.
Thank you very much. I'm going to do another last couple of songs for you now. This is a cover of one of my favourite artists at the moment, his track, and it's Stay With Me. So I really hope you enjoy my version of it. Guess it's true, I'm not good at the one-night stand. But I still need love, don't you understand? These nights never seem to go to plan. I don't want you to leave, will you hold my hand? And won't you stay with me? 'Cause you're all I need. This ain't love, it's clear to see. But darling, stay with me. Why am I so emotional? No, it's not a good look, gain some self-control. Deep down I know this never works, but you can lay with me so it doesn't hurt. Oh, won't you stay with me? Because you're all I need. This ain't love, it's clear to see. But darling, stay with me. Oh, no, no, no. No, no. Won't you stay with me? Because you're all I need. This ain't love, it's clear to see. But darling, stay with me. But darling, stay with me. Darling, stay with me. Thank you very much. This last one is a classic Welsh song, and it's called Ysbryd y Nos, and it's one of my favourites. I've always sang it since I was a child, but I always fit it into my set somehow. So this is it. If you know the words, we're very welcome to sing along with me. And thank you for having me again. Ali is a fantastic organiser of this. He doesn't like to get the credit often, but he's a fantastic bloke and really lovely event to be a part of again. So hope to see you all again soon. Pan a ddawr y lleisiau a nhw sy'n moeni, a syffrwd gwag y gwyn tîm y hoeri. Ti sy'n lliwio'r y blodau a mantell glydd y bore. Tir y dysbryd y nos, a'r tonnau yn llusgo creg yn arian, yn syffrwd yna I lyfrau sidan. Mi o'n y byddyd I yno'n barod I'm cysuro, tir y dysbryd y nos. Ysbryd y nos, tir y dyma nawr, gwasgar ar ofnau cyn y ddawr wawr. Diffodd y tywyllwch, tir y dar a dydd, gad I'm y ddod o'r nos yn y rhydd. Plith tywallt mewn y riban ei rai, yn gynnes yn dy olau pyraidd. Mi o'n y byddyd I yno yn barod I'm cysuro, tir y dysbryd y nos. Ysbryd y nos, tir y dyma nawr, gwasgar ar ofnau cyn y ddawr wawr. Diffodd y tywyllwch, tir y dar a dydd, gad I'm y ddod o'r nos yn y rhydd. Ac yno yn y dyffryn tawel, mi glywaf gan yn sŵn yr awel. A neges I dy geiriau yn hedfan y dros y bryniau. Tir y dysbryd y nos. Ysbryd y nos, tir y dyma nawr, gwasgar ar ofnau cyn y ddawr wawr. Diffodd y tywyllwch, tir y dar a Gadi me ddod o'r nos yn y Rhif. Gadi me ddod o'r